How do you make vocals sound professional? You don't need a $10,000 mic or $1 million studio. You can get professional sounding vocals in a home studio as long as you get these three things right that I'm going to show you today. Let's jump in. First thing you got to understand, pro vocals aren't timid. I'm talking about the performance and the recording. If you skip over this and skip straight to mixing, I'm going to get to the mixing stuff, I promise. But if you don't do a good job here, your mix will never sound professional. The vocal part, the vocal performance needs to sound professional. And a big key to professional sounding vocals is confidence. I've played on stage and in studios with professional musicians, and the biggest distinguishing factor amongst all of them is confidence. This confidence that you can hear in the performance. If your vocal tracks don't have that, it is worth spending whatever amount of time it takes to fix that problem. That may mean voice lessons. That may mean simply re-recording a number of times until you get to that place where the vocal is coming through confidently, but it is 100% worth it. Part of that confidence comes through in simply like good vocal technique, right? Singing out versus singing quietly. That's a part of it, and singing out will help the compression work a whole lot better when you go to use compression. But it's not about loud versus soft. It's about confident versus timid. Confident vocals produce great sounding mixes. Next, pro vocals aren't woofy. What do I mean by woofy? Let's dive into Studio One and listen. Here's the raw vocal recording of a Christmas song I'm working on with my kids. This is my vocal recorded actually with this microphone here. This is an Earthworks mic that's specifically designed for voiceover, but it's been fun to use in a vocal recording session. I even recorded clarinet with it. I'll put a link to it in the description. But it's really great, but it's designed to give a nice thick sound. That's great for voiceover, great for podcast, but for mixing in the actual vocal mix on a song, it's pretty woofy. Here's what that sounds like.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
When I say woofy, I mean the vocal has too much of this.
Joyful all ye.
There's a whole bunch of stuff happening down in the low mids and the low end. There is never a reason why I want my vocals to have that much low end. You might hear it and say, ooh, it's warm and full and sounds like a tube or whatever, but that is not going to work in a vocal mix. Here's what that sounds like on top of the music.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
Can't really hear the bass now. The guitar is kind of muffled. It's all hidden under the vocal. Plus, this isn't what pro vocals sound like. They have a nice crispness to them, and there's not a hint of that woofiness that's there. But once I mix it, it sounds closer to this.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
There's still warmth there, but it's not woofy. Here's woofy.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
Here's not woofy.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
And how does it work in the mix? It fits so much better.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
By the way, before we dive into the third one, if you don't already have a simple, repeatable process for getting great sounding mixes every time, steal my process. Go to 5stepmix.com to find out more. And the final piece, pro vocals sit on top of the mix. Now, I understand that sitting on top of the mix is so vague. What does that actually mean? For me, it actually means three specific things. The first thing is ringing. There's no ringing frequencies in the vocal that jump louder than where the vocal is sitting. So if this is the music, I typically want my vocal to sit just right on top of it, not way over it, but not buried in it either. But the only way the vocal can sit there is if there's no specific frequencies that jump out on certain words. And one of the biggest places I hear that in my work is this kind of ringing that happens on certain vowel sounds. So using the same spot that we've already used, listen to this phrase for me.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
All right, I'm going to give you a hint. Listen to the word all. Going from joyful all. There's something weird there. Take a listen.
Joyful all ye nations.
Did you hear it? One more time.
Joyful all ye.
There's a... For some reason, when I go from the L sound to the A, there's this extra resonance in my nose or my neck. I don't know what's causing it, but it happens all the time. And with any singer I've ever worked with, there's some variation of this. But there is a ringing that's happening. Let me turn it down and I'll boost that frequency. It's about 2.7K so you can hear it.
Joyful all ye nations rise.
Doesn't happen on every word, but on some words it is ridiculously pronounced. Now that you've heard it, I'm going to turn that off. Listen to it again, you'll hear it a little bit better.
Joyful all ye.
So on top of a mix, if the vocal is here and the rest of the instrumentation is here, if that little bit of is going to cause the vocal to sound too loud. You may not realize what's happening, but it makes your ear go, I don't like it. And so you go to turn the vocal down. Well, now the vocal is buried. I wanted the vocal to sit. What do? Some people might reach for compression and all sorts of, you don't need that for this. I love compression on vocals, but you just need something like this. A simple notch that just turns it down like crazy, and then the vocal sounds smooth like this.
Joyful all ye nations.
Turn it down a little bit more. Here it is.
Joyful all ye nations. Joyful all ye nations.
Verses before.
Joyful all ye.
Like it's like a pronounced like that comes through, and even the mix we would hear that as a vocal seemingly too loud. So that's the first thing, ringing. Second thing that can keep a vocal from sitting in the mix is certain phrases that just pop out. I'm a big fan of compression on a vocal, and sometimes you can just use a nice aggressive compressor like this, and you can see it's doing good amount of compression, and that's just perfect for the vocal. But sometimes that sounds perfect on just about everything, but there are phrases that are jumping out. Like this one right here is pretty loud.
My God and
that one's still a little bit loud. What do we do there? Well, we could trim that down, like cut this up and like trim it down like that. Or a simpler solution is to just add another compressor to the end of the chain, set it up something like this, where it's very high ratio, very fast attack, quick release, and set the threshold such that it really only does any gain reduction on the loudest parts. So if you watch this right here, as it gets to this section where the loud part is, that's the only place where you'll see any compression.
my God and sinners reckon.
So it just acts like kind of a bouncer who's just there saying, you stay in line, and if you jump up too high, I'm going to smack you back down. That's what we first learned compression to do, right? We typically use it more aggressively to give us tones, but this is an example where I'll use compression in exactly this manner to keep certain things from getting too loud so that my vocal still sits nicely on top of the mix. The third piece, you probably already know this, but in case you don't, a de-esser. Vocals, especially once you start compressing, can be pretty sibilant. Listen to the S's and T's here.
My God and sin.
That S is pretty ridiculously loud. With a de-esser, we can tame those S's that we've accentuated through EQ and compression so that everything stays right where we want it and those S's don't jump out above that nice level we've set for the vocal.
God and sinners reconciled.
We can still hear them, but they're not like taking over the performance. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and do all the things. I have some homework for you. Go to your studio, sit in your listening position, whether that's headphones or speakers, listen to your 3 favorite songs, and focus specifically on the vocal tone. What does the lead vocal sound like in those mixes? I bet you haven't done this in a while, and I bet you'll hear things and think, oh, in my mind, I always thought that vocal was really thick and woofy, but in reality, it's actually pretty thin, and I'm seeing that as a consistency across all the music that I listen to. Go try it out, come back and leave a comment, let us know how it worked. I'll see you in the next one.